Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a non-spoiler review of Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1. This is a 10-episode miniseries that's now on Netflix, and the first 5 episodes are now up, and we're going to do a non-spoiler review. I'll do a separate spoiler version of the review in a separate video I'll record a little bit later, and I'll go into each individual episode and kind of the things that jumped out at me. First of all, it is amazing, and that's not a surprise considering, the caliber of talent that has been gathered here. Kevin Smith is, of course, the showrunner, and he is an extraordinarily gifted filmmaker. He is an extraordinarily gifted comic book writer, and so it's no surprise that, steering the ship here, that he has crafted a wonderful, wonderful story. And of course, he has gathered a legendary voice cast. I'm sure everyone is going to be raving about Mark Hamill as Skeletor, and I'll jump on that bandwagon. The man was born to play Skeletor. I'm also really impressed with Sarah Michelle Gellar. I'm not really a Buffy fan, but man, she can act. She is the perfect Tilda. But the whole cast just does an amazing, amazing job. And as you could see in the trailers, the animation was amazing. Great stuff. All the characters look great. They didn't use the design work from Filmation. That never happens in these reboots, but what is there just looks so good. I really didn't mind. I mean, I do prefer, those Filmation backgrounds because they were the best in the business, but it looks fantastic. Same thing with the music. I mean, Filmation just had a really great ability to create these very catchy tunes, but the music we get is so epic in this. It just really is amazing. It is a feature movie quality soundtrack, and if you want to, you can go listen to it on iTunes right now. It's available, the whole album. Great stuff. It does a great job of orienting the viewers to the characters, so whether you're a new or old fan, you should be just fine. The writing is exceptional. This is the most depth that we've ever seen with these characters, and it's just wonderful. I mean, this show is badass, it's exciting, it's funny, and it's touching. There were times when I teared up watching some of these scenes, and I've never done that with Masters Universe and never, ever thought I would. So I just want to thank everyone involved for putting together such an amazing show. This really is a love letter to all 39 years of this franchise. It is a spiritual successor to the old cartoon, from the 80s, but it is not a direct follow-up or sequel. It does not use the same design work. As you can see in the trailers, Snake Mountain and Clawful and things like that just look completely different, right? And it's also not necessarily using all the story from Filmation. It is its own version of Masters of the Universe, which is what we've gotten every single time there's a new comic series or a new animated series or a new storybook series, whatever it is. All of it has been its own version of Masters of the Universe, which is fine. We're used to that as fans, right? So what it appears to be using as the basis for this story is the bios that were on the back of the Masters of the Universe Classics figures. This is a line of collectible figures in recent years that took characters from all across the franchise. Every animated series that was related to He-Man, every comic book and mini comic and everything, and put them together in one line. And so the brand manager, Scott Knightlick, he wrote these bios in his spare time, and he researched everything ever done with the franchise and weaved it all together into one story. And yeah, it could get a little convoluted and weird sometimes, but no one uses the bios straight. What it is a springboard for storytelling. The people who do the comics or the anime series will use it as a basis to, kind of pick and choose characters and ideas that they'll weave into their own stories and weave into their own version of Masters of the Universe. And that's exactly what this series does. And so it is basically the ultimate version of Masters of the Universe, or at least an ultimate version, right? There is no one right way to do it, but this, takes pieces of Filmation and 2000X and the mini comics and storybooks and Marvel Comics, and and all kinds of stuff from throughout the 39-year history of this franchise. And again, it's just an amazing love letter. If you are a fan, you will be geeking out so much. I mean, there's just so many different references in here, and I'll go through some of them, in my spoiler review. But I'm not going to go through every single line because I could make a 10-hour video about it, but I'll try to keep it relatively short, even for the spoiler version. And another cool thing, that this is the first Masters of the Universe series just called Masters of the Universe. The previous two Masters of the Universe series, both in the 80s and 2002, were both called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And I always thought that was an interesting choice, because if I look at other franchises, it's not Duke and G.I. Joe. It's not Optimus Prime and the Transformers. And that frees them up to explore all these interesting and rich characters that they have in their franchises. And so when you put the main character in the title, you feel kind of forced to focus on him. You feel kind of forced to, shoehorn that one character into every episode, and your other characters get less focus. So I'm glad to say that, this is Masters of the Universe, and so they allow themselves to focus beyond He-Man. Now, don't get your hopes up too high on that one, because it is a limited series with a set cast of characters. This is not trying to cram in every single character in the franchise, every single toy in the toy line. This is, a set cast of characters. It's a rather large one. It is a good one, but, I have my list of characters I would like to see in there. All of us fans do. We all have our list, but I'm not going to judge it from, what isn't in there. I'm going to judge it from what is in there, and, the characters that they do use quite well. And the story in the first part is exactly what we've been told it would be in both the plot synopsis and the trailer. Skeletor and He-Man have a cataclysmic battle that ends in disaster. The Power Sword is split in two, and the magic of Eternia is lost, and Tila has to gather some other characters together to go on a quest to get the two halves of the Power Sword and reunite them to bring the magic back. And I really like it because it's a premise we've never quite seen before with this franchise. And, it asks the questions, what do all the characters do now that they know He-Man's secret, now that they know he is Adam who transforms into He-Man? And what do all the characters do now that there's no He-Man and Skeletor? And it creates some very interesting situations, and we get to see some very different takes on these characters that are quite interesting. And so, yes, the characters that have always gotten a lion's share of screen time still do get a focus here. It's still mostly about Tila, Orko, and Man-at-Arms, but there are other characters like Evil Lyn who get some very significant moments and screen time in this story, including Scareglow, who appears for the first time in animated form, and there is an entire episode devoted to the characters fighting him, which is awesome. And of course, Tila is the most obvious choice to, lead the quest to save Eternia with the absence of He-Man, considering she is the captain of the Royal Guard. She was Adam's oldest friend, Adam's trainer, Adam's bodyguard, Adam's potential love interest, the Sorceress's secret daughter, the Sorceress's secret successor, Man-at-Arms' adoptive daughter. I may be leaving something out, but she has always been this multi-layered character who has gotten the majority of the screen time and story time outside of He-Man himself. She's honestly the most fleshed out character in the entire franchise. I would love to see someone else kind of get some of those layers in them. But, again, it's always been one of those franchises that's really evolved around He-Man and these core, 3 or 4 characters that hang around him. But so, it's just natural that when we get to a story like this, they're going to take the front. And no, Tila does not use the Power Sword in the story or call down the power of He-Man or anything like that. As fans know, she has her own destiny. That is not done in this 5-parter, though. She is Tila throughout the entire time, which is great because every time we get a story where she has some kind of major character development or it's apocalyptic in nature, typically Tila becomes the sorceress. That doesn't happen here. It's just great to see Tila, just being herself. Now, what will happen in part two, I don't know, right? Part two hasn't aired yet. We'll just see, where they go with her character then. If they do go in that direction, I think there's definitely a good possibility. I think this team, creative team, could definitely handle it. And yes, the potential romantic interest between Adam and Tila is certainly still intact in this version of the characters. I suspect that will come to fruition in part two. I have some theories about what will happen. They've definitely dropped some hints at the ending that we'll get in episode 10, and I'll get into those in the spoiler version of my review. As far as the age appropriateness of the series goes, it definitely cuts towards an older audience, but can still be enjoyed by younger people. But, the question is how young. 99% of it is probably, as intense as you're going to get on like Mandalorian or Clone Wars. There are a couple times people are stabbed with a little bit of blood, and there are some character deaths and some emotional complexity and, some intense action sometimes. The one caveat I would have to that, though, is that the last scene, or the scene at the end, is really intense. And it's shot in a way that's a little scarier than normal. It is definitely nightmare fuel. I slept okay last night, but I suspect it's going to make it into my dreams at some point. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I loved all the episodes. Episode 5 I felt was kind of the weaker one of the 5. But I just, I had some creative disagreements with some of the stuff they did. But that's just true of anything. I mean, I've never seen a version of Masters of the Universe I didn't have some creative disagreements with, right? That's just the nature of storytelling. You're never going to be, no one's ever going to agree 100% with the storyteller, right? But overall, this is amazing. This is definitely one of the best things that's ever been done with this franchise in 39 years. And I'm so glad. It's a limited series, but the cool thing about that is that all the plot lines they set up have to be dealt with by episode 10, right? This is not, Filmation was episodic, so they couldn't change anything, so they would set up stuff but never do it, right? And so 2002 was serialized, and they set up a bunch of stuff, but then it got canceled, so they were never able to do any of that. So this is our one chance in animated form to see all of the things that we've been promised come to fruition, and I'm super excited for it. And just super excited to see some of this stuff in animated form for the first time ever. I swear to God, there was a moment, like it wasn't even 10 minutes in, that just had me cheering and clapping because it was a moment in the comics that, like literally the night before, I was like, man, I hope that makes it in there. And it did. And I was just like, yeah. And I'll go into what that was in my spoiler review. But yeah, very happy as a guy who has been, as you can see, a Masters Universe fan since I was 5 years old. Just super happy to get something of this caliber done with the franchise. All right, guys, like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, good journey.